All right, so now that we've resolved our spacing issue, let's go back and take a look at our awesome landing page and see what we need to do next. And the first thing we'll notice is that the text here, this H1 text, is quite a bit a ways down, further down than this one is. And we also seem to have a bit of space here between our P text and our H1 text, and it looks like it's a little bit closer here, so let's go ahead and change that really quickly. Now we know how we can change this H1 text, so let's go back into brackets and let's go ahead and just give this a padding really quickly, and we'll do a padding top and let's just do about 100 pixels. There we go. Let's save that and let's make sure that that has worked. Remember, I like to refresh a lot, make sure that I'm going on the right page. All right, there we go. So now that looks a little bit better. We also want to try to move this P text up. Now before we jump back into brackets, let's go ahead and use our inspector again and take a look here, because what we'll notice is that there's not really any padding at the top of our P here, but our H1 still has a lot of padding there, or rather a bigger margin there at the bottom. So what we can do is we could change the margin, and I'll show you what it looks like if we change the margin to 0 for our P. So let's just do, our margin bottom, and let's change that to 0 really quickly. Oops. Rather, I meant to change the H1 there. I apologize. I'm supposed to be changing the H1, not the P. That wouldn't do anything. So let's take that. Let's go back to our H1 and let's change the margin on the bottom to 0. There, we'll save that. And what we should notice is now it moves up quite a bit. Now that's too far. What we want is a bit of spacing. So let's keep that around 10. So let's keep the margin bottom around 10 pixels. Let's save it. Let's take a gander. Okay, not bad. Looks closer to 15, so let's go to 15 here. And perfect. Looks a little bit better. Let's check our reference. Not bad. It might be a little bit lower. If you really want to nitpick, it looks like the padding here at the top of our H1 is a bit more in this one, but I'm not too concerned about that. Like I said, we're just trying to recreate this. Look, I don't want to have to do things exactly the same, and I'm not looking at the specific CSS styles for the original one. We're just kind of eyeballing it as we go. So now let's go ahead and we're going to add our little play button image here in the very center. In this lecture, you will have a new download available in your resources. So go ahead and download the play.png image and add that to your images folder for your project. And we're going to go back into our index.html and add that button, which is going to be very simple. So let's find where our P awesome landing page is. All right, and just below that, so we're going to keep this in the same div. Let's go below that there, and let's go ahead and add an image. So we're going to use image, and we're going to give this a class so we can style it. And let's call that class play button. All right, and we need to give this a source, which is going to be our actual image source. So let's go to images and find our play.png. And remember, we can give this an alt. And let's just call this play button. And we're also going to give this a height and a width. Now, before we do that really quickly, I want to minimize, and I'm going to go into the actual awesome landing page here. I'm going to find this play button really quickly, and I'm going to hold Control or Command I so I can see the actual size of this image. So this image is 240 pixels by 240 pixels. So it's proportional, which makes our math a lot easier. So let's go back in here, and we're going to give this a height and a width. Now, if you recall, I said 240 by 240. That's going to make things way too big. So I'm going to show you guys sort of what that looks like really quickly before we give it a width and a height. Let's go ahead and save this. Okay, so there we go. We have this massive play button. It obviously isn't that big in our actual demo website. And you'll notice that it actually looks a little bit more clear and crisp. That's because what I did was I set the width and the height to be exactly half of what the actual image size is. That is a way you can retinize an image. So let's go back in here, and as opposed to having the width and height actually what they are in the image, we're going to create, or rather make them half. So let's set the height. Let me just make sure I'm in the right spot. Yep. Height equals, and we're going to do 120 pixels. And we're going to give it a width of 120 pixels as well. Let's go ahead and save that. Now take a look, and we'll notice that our play button is nice and crisp and the right size. But it's definitely not in the right place. We want this centered, and we want there to be a bit of spacing there. So what we'll do is we'll go back into brackets. We're not going to change anything in our index.html. Let's go ahead and style this in CSS. So moving to the bottom, let's add a new field here, and this was a class called play button. So what we'll do is we'll give it a period play button for class, and let's do our brackets. There we go. And let's do a couple things. First, we want to center this, so we're going to give this a margin. Oops, let's make sure we're inside here. Let's do margin left auto, margin right auto. Okay, let's just take a look here really quickly. Obviously that's not going to center it, but what we can do to center it, let's go ahead and display block. There we go, that ought to have done it. Okay, cool. So now we have this directly in the center, but we need a bit of space. We'll notice here that there's definitely some space in between all of this. So let's go back into brackets and give this some spacing. We're going to use our padding tool. So let's use, let's do padding. Let's try, so for the top and the bottom, let's do 50 pixels on the top. 0. Let's do 0 and 0. That ought to be enough on the top. Okay, so we've moved that down. That looks about right. But what we will notice in our actual example is that we have a bunch of space here in between the play button and the sign up for free text and then the form below. So let's go ahead and change the bottom padding as well and give that a lot. It looks to almost be double, if even more. So we're going to go back and we're going to change the third number here. So this will be the bottom padding. As we recall, it goes top, right, bottom, left. Let's give this 110 pixels. And we're not going to really see that take into effect yet because there's nothing below it, but we will be able to tell once we put our other stuff in, and we're going to go ahead and add that stuff in the next video.